Welcome back, Coinology. In the vast landscape of American coinage, few things seem as ordinary as the small, reddish-brown coin that has passed through countless hands, dropped into countless jars, and rolled across kitchen tables, gas station counters, and vending machines. The humble 1-cent piece, the penny, has long been dismissed as too small to matter, too common to care about. Yet, buried beneath the layers of everyday use, hidden in the fine print of mint marks and the shimmer of copper-coated zinc, lies a world of stories, errors, mysteries, and fortunes. And among them, one stands out: the 2021 D Lincoln cent, a coin that, against all odds, has turned the numismatic world upside down. When the Denver Mint struck this coin in 2021, it was never meant to become a legend. It was a routine production year, one among billions, a continuation of the long-running Lincoln series that had begun back in 1909. The penny, redesigned several times through history, had become more symbolic than practical, a nostalgic echo of America's past. But sometimes, destiny hides in the ordinary. Somewhere in those shiny copper-plated zinc blanks that rolled off the minting presses, an anomaly emerged. One small detail, perhaps a misalignment, a doubled die, a rare minting flaw, or a unique surface anomaly, caught the eye of collectors and experts. And that was all it took to transform an everyday coin into a multi-million-dollar mystery. The 2021 D penny weighs about 2.5 grams, its small mass composed primarily of zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper that gives it that classic red luster. Its diameter, 19.05 millimeters, is consistent with modern 1-cent coins, a precise, predictable measurement that has defined U.S. coinage since the mid-20th century. The obverse side, or the front, still carries the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right, the same portrait first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. Designed by Victor David Brenner, this image has endured for more than a century, becoming one of the most recognizable faces in American currency. Above Lincoln's head, the motto "In God We Trust" arcs gracefully, while to the left sits the word liberty, and to the right, the date 2021, accompanied by a small but significant letter, the D, the mint mark of Denver. For decades, collectors have known that even the smallest imperfection can change everything. A doubled die here, a misstrike there, these are the miracles of minting errors that fuel the passion of the numismatic world. When whispers first began to circulate in late 2021 about a peculiar batch of Denver minted pennies with strange characteristics, a microscopic doubling in Lincoln's eye, an irregular finish on the surface, or perhaps an unconfirmed experimental die, no one imagined it would lead to a frenzy. But soon, photos appeared online, coin forums buzzed, and collectors began inspecting every 2021 D penny they could find. What made this coin so special was not just rarity, it was the mystery. The U.S. Mint, as always, remained tight-lipped, neither confirming nor denying rumors about experimental mint runs or die varieties. Yet, somehow, one specimen surfaced at auction, verified and authenticated by professional graders, showing a never-before-seen variation in detail, texture, and composition. The coin's surfaces shimmered differently under light, its weight fractionally varied from the standard, and its edge appeared slightly irregular. Whether this was a minting error or an intentional prototype, nobody could say for sure. But that uncertainty was its power. When the coin was listed for auction, collectors expected it to draw attention, maybe even fetch a few $1,000s. But no one was prepared for what happened next. As the bids rolled in, the price skyrocketed, climbing past $10,000, then $50,000, then $100,000. Major collectors, investors, and even private museums joined the bidding war. By the time the hammer fell, the coin had reached a staggering valuation of nearly $20 million, a number almost unthinkable for a coin minted in such recent history. How could something so small, so recent, so seemingly insignificant, command such a value? The answer lies in a combination of rarity, intrigue, and cultural symbolism. The penny, after all, is more than a coin. It's a relic of trust, continuity, and identity. It represents the enduring image of Abraham Lincoln, the man who preserved the Union, who ended slavery, who became a symbol of honesty and perseverance. Every American knows the face, even if they don't consciously think of it. So when a new version of that familiar face, struck with a mysterious imperfection or unique characteristic, emerges, it resonates deeply. It's not just metal, it's mythology, and the 2021 D penny carries more than myth. Its design links it directly to a long line of changes that have marked the evolution of U.S. coinage. The reverse, introduced in 2010, features a Union shield with 13 vertical stripes bound together by a single horizontal banner inscribed with E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one. The shield symbolizes unity, strength, and the idea that the nation, though made up of many, remains one. At the top, United States of America curves in bold letters, and at the bottom sits the denomination, 1 cent. It's a simple yet powerful emblem, echoing both heritage and hope. To the casual observer, the 2021 D penny looks identical to any other Lincoln cent from the past decade. But to a trained eye, to the collector who lives for the thrill of discovery, its tiny anomalies tell a story. Perhaps it's the way the strike lines around Lincoln's jaw curve, or how the rim seems a fraction higher on one side, or how the copper plating catches light differently than it should. Every microscopic feature can carry meaning. Each could mark the difference that connects modern times to the great lineage of coin collecting stretching back centuries. The very idea that something so small can embody so much design, art, history, technology, and chance is what makes numismatics such a fascinating pursuit. Behind every coin lies the hidden story of its creation, the metal's source, the die's engraving, the machine's pressure, the mint worker's touch, and the journey it takes from mint to pocket to fame. Those who have examined the $20 million 2021D specimen up close describe an almost otherworldly aura. Under magnification, its fields, the flat areas around the raised designs, gleam with an unusual texture, like a fine satin sheen rather than the typical matte finish of mass-produced coins. Its edges are crisp, sharp, but with a subtle irregularity that hints at a unique striking process. The relief, the height of Lincoln's profile and the shield's ridges, appears slightly deeper than normal, suggesting either a stronger press or an experimental die. The coin's color, too, seems to shift between rich copper red and a faint rose-gold tone depending on the angle of light. All these minute variations contribute to its mystique. Die in the numismatic world, context is everything. A rare coin is not merely metal, it's a time capsule. The 2021D penny tells a story not just about minting but about an era, a world emerging from a pandemic, a society balancing between tradition and technology, a mint still operating with precision in a time of global uncertainty. To own such a coin is to hold a fragment of that story in your hand, but what drives people to pay such astronomical prices for coins like this? Some call it obsession, others call it out there. Countless people are emptying their pockets, sifting through jars, checking every penny they find under bright light, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they too might hold the next great discovery. The thrill of possibility, the chase of hidden value, that's what keeps collectors searching. Every new coin is a mystery waiting to be solved, a story waiting to be told. The legend of the 2021D penny is still unfolding. Some experts speculate that there may be more examples yet undiscovered, perhaps a few escaped into circulation unnoticed, blending in among billions of others, lying in wait in someone's change jar or resting quietly in a forgotten drawer. If even one of those were to surface, its value could easily rival the first. But for now, The story of the 2021D Lincoln penny's rise to legendary status did not begin in a grand auction hall or a high-security vault. It began, as so many great coin stories do, with a moment of curiosity. A man in Colorado, whose name the world would come to know only later, was sorting through a handful of loose change one quiet afternoon. He was not a professional collector, not a trained numismatist, just an ordinary person with a lifelong fascination for coins. He had grown up hearing stories from his grandfather about the rare 1943 copper penny, about the double die errors of the 1950s, about the secrets hidden in mint marks so small most people never even saw them. On that day in early 2022, he held a bright 2021D penny up to the light, and something about it caught his attention. It was subtle at first, a slight shimmer that seemed deeper, warmer, almost metallic rose rather than copper red. The texture of the fields, too, appeared softer, as if the light diffused differently across the surface. He turned it over, inspecting the shield on the reverse side, and noticed that the horizontal banner inscribed with E pluribus unum looked faintly thicker, as though it had been struck with more force. The edges were razor-sharp, unusually so for a coin that had already circulated. It seemed to have a weight, a density, an aura that separated it from the rest. He placed it on a digital scale, 2.51 grams. A minuscule difference, but enough to ignite curiosity. He measured it with calipers. The diameter was consistent, but the rim thickness was uneven by the tiniest fraction. He compared it with other pennies minted the same year, and slowly realization dawned. This was no ordinary coin. At first he thought it might simply be an error coin, the kind that fetches modest sums among collectors, maybe worth a few $100s if authenticated. But something urged him to look deeper. He reached out to a local coin dealer, a man who had spent decades examining Lincoln cents under magnification. When the dealer saw the penny under a loupe, he fell silent for nearly a minute. Then he whispered the words that would set events in motion: "This is different." They sent it for professional grading and authentication to one of the most respected numismatic organizations in the world. Weeks passed. When the results returned, they came with astonishment. The graders confirmed that the coin displayed unique die characteristics unlike any known 2021D variety. The metal composition was fractionally outside standard tolerances. Its surface texture was anomalous, possibly indicative of a prototype plating experiment. The coin's condition was virtually flawless, a mint-state specimen, yet unlike any previously catalogued. When news leaked into collector circles, it spread like wildfire. Forums lit up with speculation, YouTube channels dedicated to coin hunting began analyzing photos frame by frame, and numismatic magazines published breathless articles about the mysterious 2021D. Some skeptics dismissed it as overhyped. Others whispered of secret test runs, unreported dies, or even deliberate mint experiments that somehow escaped into the public. By late 2022, auction houses were already contacting the discoverer, offering private deals, valuations, and security consultations. One prominent firm proposed an opening bid of $1 million, believing the coin might set a record for a modern-era penny. But the owner hesitated. He wanted the world to see it, to understand why it mattered, not just as an investment but as a piece of living history. When the coin finally appeared at a major international auction in early 2023, collectors, investors, and journalists filled the hall. Cameras flashed as the small slabbed penny, sealed in transparent plastic with its certification number, was placed beneath the bright lights of the stage. The auctioneer, with decades of experience behind him, paused for a moment before opening the bidding. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "you are looking at a coin that may redefine what rarity means in the modern age." The first bid came quickly, $100,000. Then another. Within minutes it surpassed $1 million. The tension in the room was electric. As the number climbed, gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. 5 million. 10 million. The auctioneer's voice trembled slightly as he called for new bids. At 12 million, a silence fell, and then, from the back of the room, a hand rose. The new bid, $20 million even. The crowd erupted in applause. The hammer fell. And just like that, a 1-cent coin, minted barely 2 years before, had become one of the most expensive coins ever sold in history. But beyond the headlines and the staggering price tag, what made this coin truly extraordinary was what it represented. It challenged the notion that only ancient or historic coins could hold immense value. It reminded the world that the mint, even in the 21st century, could produce mysteries. And it reaffirmed the timeless truth that human fascination with rarity knows no bounds. The buyer, whose identity remains confidential, was rumored to be a private collector with a passion for experimental mint issues. He reportedly stated through intermediaries that the coin was a masterpiece of accident and intention, a bridge between artistry and technology. 4 months afterward, the coin was stored under high security, accessible only to experts for study. Photographs circulated, analyses were published, and theories multiplied. Some speculated that the coin's slight weight variation could be due to an experimental alloy, perhaps a change in zinc purity or plating thickness tested during production. Others believed it might have been struck with a prototype die meant to test new surface treatments or anti-counterfeiting features. There were even whispers that the mint, under confidentiality agreements, had tested a new copper-nickel layer on a limited batch before reverting to standard composition. None of these theories were ever confirmed, and perhaps that uncertainty is what preserved the coin's mystique. Meanwhile, the discovery inspired thousands of treasure hunters across America and beyond. People began examining their change again, searching for the faint D mark beneath the 2021 date. Videos flooded social media of hobbyists inspecting pennies with magnifying lenses, hoping to find the next $1 million specimen. The legend had sparked a global phenomenon. Coin shops reported surges in traffic. Dealers began offering small rewards for 2021D pennies with unusual characteristics. Even children, hearing the stories from parents or teachers, started collecting. The smallest denomination of U.S. currency had suddenly become a symbol of hope, curiosity, and possibility. The 2021D penny story also reignited debates about the future of the cent itself. For years, policymakers had argued about whether to discontinue it due to rising production costs. It had long cost more than a cent to make a penny, about 1.76 cents per coin according to Mint reports. Yet the emotional attachment Americans felt to the penny, and particularly to Lincoln's portrait, made it politically untouchable. After the auction, the irony became impossible to ignore. A coin that cost less than 2 cents to produce had sold for $20 million. Economists analyzed the phenomenon as a case study in perceived value, while cultural commentators saw it as a reflection of nostalgia in uncertain times. In a world increasingly dominated by digital transactions, the physical coin represented something tangible, something human. It was proof that meaning could still be minted in metal, that connection to the past still mattered. As weeks turned into months, the coin's fame only grew. It toured major exhibitions under tight security, displayed behind reinforced glass under controlled lighting. Visitors lined up for hours to see it, not because of its price tag, but because of what it symbolized. It was a reminder that extraordinary things can emerge from the most ordinary circumstances. For numismatists, the 2021D became a benchmark, the modern holy grail of Lincoln cents. Researchers published detailed photomicrographs, mapping every line, ridge, and contour. Some found microscopic die cracks along the rim, others noted unusual flow lines suggesting non-standard striking pressure. A few even hypothesized that the coin might have been the result of an early die state issue that was corrected almost immediately, leaving only a handful of examples struck before adjustment. Whatever the technical explanation, the emotional response was universal. The 2021 D penny had reignited the thrill of discovery in a field that many thought had already found all its treasures. It reminded people that every handful of change holds the potential for wonder. And it connected generations, from old collectors hunched over magnifiers to young enthusiasts discovering the beauty of coins for the first time. Of the man who found it, now forever linked with its story, continued to live a quiet life. Interviews revealed his humility and gratitude. When asked what he felt holding that coin for the first time, he smiled and said, "I felt history staring back at me. I felt Lincoln looking right through me, as if to say, even the smallest things matter." The phrase spread quickly, printed on posters and shared online, "Even the smallest things matter." It became more than a motto, it became a reflection of the penny's journey, from pocket change to priceless treasure. But even as the coin rested safely behind glass, scholars and historians began delving deeper into its origins. They scoured mint records, production logs, metallurgical analyses, and quality control reports. While most details of the Denver Mint's 2021 production run were routine, a curious note surfaced, a short experimental period in. Every coin tells a story, but the story of the Lincoln cent is not just about currency, it's about a nation's soul carved into metal. To understand why the 2021 D penny matters so deeply, we must travel back to the beginning of the Lincoln series, more than a century before that modern coin ever gleamed under Denver's lights. It was 1909, the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The United States Mint decided that for the first time in its history, an actual person, a real historical figure, would appear on a circulating coin. Until then, American coinage had been adorned only with allegorical figures, Lady Liberty, eagles, shields, and wreaths, symbols of ideals rather than faces of people. But Lincoln was different. His legacy was too powerful, his image too revered. President Theodore Roosevelt himself championed the idea, believing that art should elevate national identity, and that coins could serve as miniature monuments to American greatness. The artist chosen was Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian immigrant who had studied Lincoln's features for years. He admired the president's humanity, the deep lines of compassion on his face, the quiet strength in his eyes. When Brenner's design debuted on the 1909 cent, it was revolutionary. For the first time, the American public saw the face of a real man in their everyday transactions. It wasn't just a coin, it was a symbol of remembrance and unity. Over the decades, the Lincoln penny would evolve, mirroring the story of the United States itself. From the original wheat ears reverse of 1909 to the memorial reverse of 1959, and finally to the Union Shield reverse of 2010, each design carried with it an era's sentiment, the wheat representing growth and prosperity, the memorial representing reverence and memory, and the shield representing unity and resilience. Through wars, depressions, and technological revolutions, the penny endured. The Denver Mint became one of the great guardians of this tradition. Opened in 1906, it was a fortress of precision, producing billions of coins every year. Its D-Mint mark became a sign of reliability, and its output, from silver dollars to modern cents, filled the pockets and purses of generations. Inside its red brick walls, vast coining presses thundered day and night, stamping the nation's identity into metal. Each strike was a small act of history, millions of moments of craftsmanship that together shaped America's everyday life. By the time 2021 arrived, the world had changed beyond recognition. The pandemic had shifted economies, digital currencies were emerging, and cash transactions were declining. Yet the Mint continued to strike coins, honoring both necessity and legacy. The 2021 D penny, struck in those months, seemed destined to be one of countless billions until fate intervened. The extraordinary coin that would later fetch $20 million wasn't merely a lucky survivor, it was a messenger from history, whispering through time about craftsmanship, chance, and meaning. When experts examined it under high magnification, they saw more than differences in texture or weight, they saw evidence of how even modern minting, with all its automation and control, still contains room for the unpredictable, the human, the miraculous. Some say the 2021 DS uniqueness was born from a single misalignment deep within a coining press, a moment lasting less than a second, yet powerful enough to create something the world would cherish forever. Imagine the scene: sheets of zinc blanks being fed into the press, copper plating glinting under factory lights, rhythmic machinery filling the air with mechanical thunder. Then, one blank slightly off-center, one die perhaps warmed by a fraction more heat, one vibration slightly out of tune, and in that instant, a masterpiece was struck. For collectors, this is what makes coinage magical. Each coin is a frozen second of history, an imprint of human intention and machine precision. And in that intersection of art, science, and chance, beauty is born. The 2021 D penny represents that intersection perfectly. It is both ordinary and extraordinary, both mass-produced and utterly singular. As its fame grew, historians began connecting it symbolically to Lincoln himself. Just as Lincoln rose from humble beginnings to unimaginable greatness, so too did this smallest of coins ascend to glory. The penny, the lowest denomination, long dismissed as worthless, became priceless. It was as though history itself had written a parable in metal, a reminder that value is not determined by size, but by significance. People from every walk of life found meaning in its story. Teachers used it to explain history, philosophers cited it as proof, metallurgists revisited alloy samples, and archivists pored over calibration logs. They found nothing that definitively explained the anomaly. Yet one memo, dated mid-2021, described a brief trial of modified plating parameters intended to test enhanced corrosion resistance. The test, reportedly limited to a few thousand coins, was supposed to be recycled, but perhaps, just perhaps, one escaped the system. If so, the 2021 D penny would be more than a minting error. It would be a survivor from a secret experiment, a witness to innovation, an unintended ambassador of the mint's future. Its very existence sparked discussions among mint designers about how much of their work goes unnoticed. They began to speak of coin design as a dialogue between the visible and invisible, between what the public sees on the surface and what lies beneath. The Lincoln portrait, struck millions of times every day, carries not only the image of a man but also the effort of every engraver, machinist, and operator who makes it possible. Each layer of copper, each etched line, each machine vibration is part of that invisible dialogue. The 2021 D, by standing out, made people listen again. Collectors visiting exhibits where the coin was displayed often described a peculiar feeling when they stood before it, an awareness that they were not simply looking at a piece of currency, but at something far greater. Its color glowed under museum lights like aged bronze touched by sunlight. The details seemed sharper, the lines more alive, as if Lincoln himself had stepped a little closer to the viewer. Many called it the living penny. And perhaps that is what gives it its power. It feels alive. It carries the heartbeat of history, the rhythm of a minting press, the pulse of human curiosity. It reminds us that even in a digital age, the tangible still speaks. The market value, though staggering, became almost secondary to its cultural resonance. Experts estimated its insured worth at $20 million, but for those who understood it, no price could define it. It had become a talisman of possibility, an emblem of hope. It told people that even the smallest, most overlooked things might contain unimaginable worth. Museums requested replicas for educational displays, artists painted its likeness, poets wrote verses comparing its journey to that of a comet, brief, brilliant, and unforgettable. The U.S. Mint, though officially silent about the anomaly, quietly acknowledged its impact by hosting lectures about modern minting precision, indirectly celebrating the art that has reawakened something ancient, the thrill of treasure hunting. Not in the form of gold or jewels, but in the form of discovery itself. It is the thrill of possibility that somewhere, in the most ordinary of places, greatness might still be waiting to be found. For those who hold the 2021 D penny in reverence, its meaning transcends material value. It speaks of precision and chance, of history and innovation, of human craftsmanship and divine accident. It speaks of Lincoln's legacy and the endurance of ideals. It is, in its own way, a reflection of the American spirit, resilient, evolving, and full of surprises. And so, as the legend continues, the 2021 D penny stands not only as a masterpiece of minting but as a mirror held up to the human experience. It whispers that beauty can emerge from routine, that fortune can hide in plain sight, that even in an age of algorithms and automation, serendipity still has a place. It teaches us that every object, no matter how small, carries a story waiting to be told, and that perhaps, in searching for that story, we rediscover something of ourselves. In the quiet hum of museum halls where the 2021 D penny now rests, visitors move slowly, almost reverently, as though in the presence of something sacred. Some stand silently, letting the glow of the tiny copper coin draw them in. Others whisper to companions, trying to understand how such a small piece of metal could hold a value greater than estates, cars, and fortunes combined. Yet, beyond the number, beyond the $20 million price tag, lies the real reason the 2021 D penny has captured the imagination of millions. It embodies something that money cannot buy: meaning. For decades, society has been drifting away from tangible things. Digital wallets, virtual currencies, electronic transactions, the weight of coins, once comforting in the palm, has become almost alien. But the 2021 D reminds us of the physicality of value, the intimacy of history we can touch. Its surface bears not only Lincoln's likeness but also the invisible fingerprints of everyone who's ever believed that even the smallest things matter. Collectors speak of it not in the language of profit but of reverence. They describe it as an artifact of destiny, an object that arrived precisely when it was needed, a symbol of persistence in a world obsessed with speed, a testament to patience in an era of instant gratification. The penny, in its simplicity, reflects something deeply human, our longing to hold on to the past while still reaching for the future. Economists may analyze it as a market anomaly, but to those who understand its story, it's something much more profound. The 2021 D penny has become a metaphor for transformation. It began as a simple coin, zinc and copper, worth a single cent, and through a combination of error, chance, and discovery, it transcended its purpose. In doing so, it mirrors the human journey. We, too, are shaped by the pressures of time, the strikes of experience, and the polish of circumstance until, one day, something within us shines differently. The psychological pull of rarity has always fascinated humankind. Since ancient times, people have searched for the unique, the one item that exists beyond replication. From gemstones buried deep in the earth to artifacts sealed within tombs, rarity has always symbolized a bridge between the ordinary and the extraordinary. The 2021 D penny fits squarely in that lineage. It proves that rarity is not only a matter of age or grandeur, it can emerge from the everyday. What makes its story so captivating is that it defies hierarchy. Anyone, anywhere, could have found it. It didn't rest in a vault or a private collection before discovery. It was struck, circulated, spent, and handled like any other coin. It could have fallen to the floor of a grocery store, been tossed into a tip jar, or lain forgotten beneath couch cushions. Its journey from anonymity to fame is what makes it so universally relatable. It whispers to everyone that miracles can hide in plain sight. As the years passed after its discovery, documentaries, podcasts, and books retold the story from every angle: the metallurgical mystery, the collector's triumph, the economic implications. Yet, one theme echoed through all: destiny. The odds of that specific coin surviving undamaged, being found by someone who noticed its differences, and being authenticated in time to make history are astronomical. It's as if a chain of invisible decisions, stretching back to the moment the Denver Mint's press struck the die, conspired to ensure this coin's survival. Within collector circles, discussions grew philosophical. Could value itself be a form of faith? After all, a coin's worth is not inherent, it's agreed upon, a pact between people, a belief that what they hold has meaning. The 2021 D penny exposed the fragility and beauty of that belief. Its metal content may be worth less than 2 cents, yet its story gave it value beyond measure. In quiet rooms lit by magnifying lamps, coin enthusiasts continue to study photographs of the 2021 D. They trace the subtle lines, the faint variations, the tiny spark that sets it apart. Some call it a miracle of metallurgy, others, an accident of time. But to most, it's proof that perfection is not always the goal. Sometimes, it's the imperfection that makes something unforgettable. The coin's current market value is stabilized near the $20 million mark, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold. Insurance appraisers struggle to classify it. Banks can't quite comprehend it. Yet collectors understand instinctively. To them, it's priceless, a piece of modern mythology. When numismatists speak of it at conventions, their voices soften. They compare it to the 1943 bronze Lincoln cent, the 1955 double die, the 1969 S-error, coins that became legends not because of what they were made of, but because of the stories they carried. The 2021 D now stands proudly among them, a bridge between the golden age of coin collecting and the digital era of blockchain and NFTs. While digital assets may dominate headlines, this single physical coin continues to prove that authenticity, when tangible, carries a power unmatched by code. The 2021 D's rise also sparked a renewed interest in the art of minting. For years, the US Mint had been viewed largely as a machine of mass production, but the coin's discovery reminded people that minting is also a form of artistry. Behind every die lies craftsmanship, the delicate engraving of Lincoln's cheekbones, the precision of the shield symmetry, the alignment of inscriptions that balance faith, liberty, and unity. Those details, when perfectly struck, become poetry in metal. The Denver Mint's artisans began to speak of their work with newfound pride, knowing that among billions of uniform strikes, their craft had produced something immortal, and so the penny became more than a collector's dream, it became a cultural touchstone. News outlets began referring to it as the miracle cent. Schools used it in lessons about economics, mathematics, and history. It became a symbol of optimism, proof that greatness can rise from the smallest things. Children collected pennies again, parents told them stories of hidden treasures, and families began saving jars of coins not for their monetary value, but for the wonder of what might be waiting within. The legend of the 2021 D penny also invited reflection on Abraham Lincoln himself. His image, immortalized on the coin, seemed to gain new resonance. Lincoln represented humility, perseverance, and moral clarity, qualities that had guided a divided nation through its darkest hours. That those same qualities now shone through a tiny, flawed coin felt poetic. It was as if Lincoln's face, pressed into copper, continued to teach the same lesson he had in life, that worth is measured not by power or wealth, but by endurance and purpose. Even today, experts continue to study the coin's unique metallurgical composition. Using scanning electron microscopes and spectral analysis, researchers discovered minute differences in plating depth, variations smaller than a human hair. These discrepancies may seem insignificant, yet they form the foundation of the coin's legend. They are the fingerprints of its identity, the marks that separate it from billions of others. Beyond science, however, lies emotion, and that's where its true power resides. When collectors describe the first time they saw it in person, they speak of goosebumps, of awe, of a sense that they were standing in the presence of something eternal. They talk about how the light catches Lincoln's jawline just so, how the reflections shimmer across the shield like sunlight on water. The experience transcends collecting, it becomes almost spiritual. In interviews, museum curators often mention that the exhibit containing the 2021 D penny attracts more visitors than displays of ancient gold. When asked why, they give a simple answer: because it's relatable. Everyone has held a penny. That universality makes it magical. It doesn't belong to the elite, it belongs to everyone. As night falls over Denver, the Mint's red brick walls glow under the streetlights. Inside, new coins are still being struck, billions of them, each carrying Lincoln's face, each repeating a story more than a century old. Somewhere among them, another anomaly might be forming right now, unnoticed, waiting for discovery. The sound of the presses echoes like a heartbeat, steady and eternal. The legacy continues, coin after coin, story after story, and in that endless rhythm of creation, one truth remains: value is never static. It evolves, it surprises, it inspires. The 2021 D penny, born of chance and elevated by wonder, is living proof that greatness often hides in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look. The story of the 2021 D penny did not end when it was placed behind glass. In truth, that was only the beginning. The coin, though motionless under soft museum lighting, continues to travel not through pockets or cash registers, but through imagination. It moves across minds and generations, whispered about in classrooms, collector clubs, and late-night conversations between friends who suddenly find themselves staring at a handful of loose change with a new sense of wonder. Every great relic carries a resonance, a pulse that never truly fades. For this penny, that resonance is hope. It represents the belief that in a world overwhelmed by the vast and the virtual, something so small can still spark fascination. To hold a penny and imagine it could be the one worth $20 million is to awaken a childlike sense of possibility. It is to remember what it feels like to believe in discovery, in miracles hidden within the mundane. Collectors often describe how, before this penny became famous, there was a lull in numismatics. Younger generations were drifting away, drawn instead to digital treasures and instant wealth. But after the 2021 DS story broke, everything changed. Coin clubs began filling again. Online forums that had long been quiet suddenly buzzed with excitement. People started learning to read mint marks, to examine surfaces under magnifying glasses, to care again about the history behind the smallest unit of currency. The penny, once dismissed as obsolete, had become a teacher, a storyteller, a symbol of persistence. The coin story also rippled beyond the collecting world. Artists painted it. Writers used it as a metaphor in novels and poems. Filmmakers began developing scripts that revolved around its legend, a humble object that transforms the life of whoever discovers it. The penny inspired songs, documentaries, podcasts, and even a digital art collection where each image represented the concept of value reborn. Suddenly, what began as metal became meaning, what began as currency became culture, and beneath it all lies the silent question that everyone who hears about the 2021 D penny eventually asks themselves: what would I have done if I found it? Would I have recognized it? Would I have sold it, or kept it as a symbol of destiny? That question, simple yet profound, reveals why the story endures. Because the truth is, everyone sees a reflection of themselves in that tiny coin, the desire to be the one who notices what others overlook, the dream of discovering something extraordinary in ordinary life. Those who have studied its surface closely often speak of a strange energy it gives off, a kind of magnetism that is hard to explain. They say that even through glass, the penny feels alive, almost watchful, as if aware of the countless eyes that have sought it, the endless stories told in its name. Under museum lights, its copper surface seems to shift with every angle, glowing brighter in some moments, darker in others, as though breathing in time with the visitor's awe. And what about the original discoverer? The person who found it, an ordinary man, by all accounts, who had been sorting through a small batch of coins late one night in 2022, unaware that his life was about to change forever. He noticed something unusual about one penny: the strike seemed sharper, the color deeper, the texture more polished than the rest. He placed it aside, thinking it might be worth a second look. Days later, when a numismatic expert confirmed the anomaly, disbelief gave way to astonishment. Within weeks, the story had spread across news outlets worldwide. The discoverer's life transformed overnight. Interviews, documentaries, invitations to speak at conventions, he became a reluctant celebrity in the world of coin collecting. Yet when asked what the penny truly meant to him, his answer was simple. "It taught me to pay attention," he said. "That's all. It taught me that miracles don't always shout. Sometimes, they whisper." That sentiment captured the essence of the 2021 D penny. It was not loud or grandiose. It didn't demand attention. It simply existed, quietly, humbly, and yet with a hidden brilliance that revealed itself only to the observant. In many ways, it mirrored the values engraved upon it: liberty, trust, and unity. The same ideals that Lincoln once fought to preserve continued to echo through this smallest coin, as though time itself had conspired to remind humanity of what truly matters. Economists still debate its astronomical value. Some argue that it represents the irrationality of human markets, that people assign worth not based on material but emotion. But perhaps that is exactly the point. For what is value, if not emotion crystallized into belief? The 2021 D penny forces even the most analytical minds to acknowledge that worth is never purely numerical. It is woven from stories, from rarity, from human fascination. Meanwhile, at the Denver Mint, the presses continue to thunder. Each strike is identical in process yet different in fate. Some coins will circulate for decades, others will vanish within months, and perhaps one is somewhere, someday, will again defy all expectations. Mint workers who once regarded their jobs as routine now speak of their work with awe. "Every time I see a penny roll out," one said, "I wonder if I'm looking at the next legend." The penny's rise also reignited discussions about the importance of physical currency itself. In a world where digits on a screen dominate daily life, the coin became a reminder that tangible things have a kind of soul. When you hold a coin, you're holding history, an object that has passed through countless hands, carrying silent stories of every exchange. The 2021 D brought that awareness back. It retaught people to feel connected to touch, to weight, to texture, to the simple beauty of something real. As more time passed, its legend deepened. The coin's auction history became part of its myth. When it first sold for a staggering $20 million, the bidding room fell silent for a moment, as though the entire world had paused to absorb the meaning of what had just happened. A 1-cent piece, born from an ordinary mint run, had ascended into the realm of priceless art. Reporters described tears in the eyes of those present, not from envy, but from the realization that they were witnessing something historic. Since that day, the penny has traveled the world. It has been displayed in Paris, Tokyo, London, and Abu Dhabi. Each time it's unveiled, the reaction is the same, a mixture of disbelief and reverence. People queue for hours just to glimpse it for a few seconds. Some bring their own pennies to compare, others simply to feel connected to the story. It has become a global symbol of possibility, proof that even in an age dominated by algorithms and artificial intelligence, the human capacity for wonder remains unbroken. Philosophers have written essays about its symbolism, calling it the modern philosopher's stone, an object that transforms the common into the divine, the simple into the extraordinary. They draw parallels between its journey and humanity's own search for meaning. Both begin in the ordinary and become valuable only when seen with new eyes. The penny's rise, they argue, is not about metal or money, but perception. It's about learning to see again, and so the legend grows, each retelling layering new meaning upon the old. Somewhere tonight, a child might be turning over coins on a kitchen table, dreaming of finding their own miracle cent somewhere. A collector might be polishing a display case, waiting for the next story that will redefine value. Somewhere, the hum of a mint might echo through the night, pressing history into metal again and again, unaware of which strike will become immortal. The 2021 D penny rests quietly now, but its silence is deceptive. It hums with the weight of every gaze, every whisper, every dream it has inspired. It has become more than an artifact, it is an idea. A reminder that in the rush of modern life, the extraordinary still hides among the ordinary, waiting to be seen by those who look closely enough. The legend of the 2021 D penny now lives in a quiet stillness, a moment that feels suspended between history and myth. Somewhere in that silence, there's the faint metallic echo of its first strike, the instant when copper and zinc fused together and became something more than material. That sound still vibrates through time, like a memory that refuses to fade, reminding us that every great story begins with something small, something ordinary. As years have passed, the penny has taken on meanings its makers never imagined. To many, it has become a mirror for the human spirit. It shows how value grows not from perfection but from endurance, from the marks of being handled, carried, and noticed. Its surface, polished and scrutinized under light, bears the story of pressure, heat, and patience, the same forces that shape a person's life. Every microscratch is a chapter, every reflection is a new interpretation. In universities and think tanks, the coin has become a subject of study that blurs the line between economics and philosophy. Scholars debate whether its value is real or imagined, But the deeper they look, the clearer it becomes that imagination itself is real, that faith in a story can turn copper into treasure. In a way, the coin is not only about money, it's about belief. It demonstrates that when enough hearts decide something matters, it becomes priceless. Those who visit the museum often describe a strange feeling when they stand before it, a kind of quiet humility, as if the coin is reminding them of something they've forgotten. They look through the glass and see not just Lincoln's face, but the face of time itself, patient and steady, watching generations come and go. For a moment, they see how fragile and beautiful human creations are, how meaning is something we pour into the world through attention and care. But collectors who were once obsessed with possession have begun to talk instead about stewardship. They no longer see the penny as a thing to own but as something to protect. They speak of it as a guardian of memory, a small ambassador from the past teaching the future to notice. When the museum lights dim at closing, some say the coin seems to glow a little brighter, as if aware that the night outside is growing darker and it must hold the light for everyone. In small towns, people still tell their children the story of the man who found it, how he looked closer when everyone else would have passed it by. It's become a parable about patience and mindfulness. Teachers use it to remind students that attention is the rarest form of generosity, that to see something fully is to give it life. Somewhere, a young boy or girl might be turning a penny in their palm, feeling the faint ridges and wondering if they too might someday find a miracle hiding in the ordinary. Artisans and craftsmen, inspired by its tale, have begun creating their own tributes, sculptures of magnified pennies, paintings of Lincoln's profile dissolving into starlight, jewelry cast from old copper melts engraved with the words "worth beyond measure." Each work is an echo of the same idea, that art, value, and story are intertwined, that nothing is truly worthless once it carries meaning. As the penny's myth spread further, it started to appear in unexpected places. Economists quoted it when speaking about inflation and trust. Poets used it as metaphor for the soul. Philosophers debated whether value itself might be the last form of magic left in the modern world. Even religious leaders, across traditions, mentioned it in sermons as a symbol of humility, a lesson that greatness can dwell in the smallest forms. There is something universal about the way people lean toward that story. It touches a place deeper than desire for wealth. It reaches into the quiet part of the heart that longs for permanence, for proof that something small and fragile can endure. We live in a world that forgets quickly, that replaces one wonder with the next, yet this single coin continues to anchor attention, holding it steady like a heartbeat. If you listen closely in the museum's gallery, beneath the murmur of visitors and the faint hum of air conditioning, you can almost hear the whisper of its journey, the moment it left the Denver Mint, the countless hands it might have brushed, the silence of the night it was discovered. It's as though the coin remembers every second of its existence, every vibration of the presses, every flicker of light that has passed across its face, and somewhere in that silence, people begin to sense that the story of the 2021 penny is really the story of themselves. It's about the search for meaning in a world that measures everything in numbers. It's about slowing down long enough to see beauty in the common. It's about understanding that sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest truths. The man who found it once returned to the museum in secret, years after he had sold it. He stood in the crowd anonymously, watching others marvel at what he had once held in his hand. Later, he said it felt as if the coin was looking back at him, forgiving, gentle, eternal. "It doesn't belong to me anymore," he said softly. "It belongs to everyone who still believes there's magic left in this world." That is how the legend endures, not through possession but through sharing. The penny continues to remind the world that wonder expands when given away. Its worth grows each time someone pauses to imagine what it represents: patience, faith, discovery, and the quiet brilliance of noticing. And somewhere, as night settles over Denver and the lights in the mint flicker out one by one, a new batch of pennies cools on metal trays. They look identical, yet among them, perhaps, another story waits, a coin that will one day carry the weight of 1,000,000,000 dreams. For now, they sleep, shining faintly in the dark, while the original 2021 penny keeps watch, a single spark of copper light glowing in the vast silence of history. Over time, the story of the 2021 penny began to drift beyond the world of collectors, historians, and economists. It entered the realm of myth, that quiet and mysterious space where fact dissolves into meaning and memory becomes larger than truth. People no longer spoke of the coin simply as an object but as a presence, a symbol of how something small could outlast everything else, outlast trends, technologies, and even the people who once held it. It became a mirror reflecting the most ancient human longing, the desire to be remembered. In the soft glow of museum lights, the penny sits at the center of its glass chamber, surrounded by dark velvet and still air. Cameras flash, eyes linger, and yet, the coin remains calm, motionless, silent, eternal. Around it, the world keeps spinning, digital screens flashing numbers and symbols, currencies changing value in milliseconds, and yet, this one coin, struck in 2021, holds steady. It doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't depend on networks or markets. It simply exists, carrying within its round body the weight of everything humanity has forgotten to notice, and that is where its true power lies, in stillness. In a century that worships speed, the 2021 penny teaches slowness. It teaches attention. When you stand before it, the noise of the world seems to fade, replaced by a hum of quiet awe. It's as if the coin demands reverence not because of its price, but because of what it represents, the endurance of meaning in a world that constantly moves past it. Philosophers have long argued that value itself is a kind of memory, that we assign worth to things that remind us of who we are. The 2021 penny embodies that perfectly. It reminds us of the beginning, of childhood, of saving coins in jars, of simple acts that once carried joy. It brings us back to a tactile world, a world where you could feel the weight of money, where every coin had a story. It reminds us of a time when the word cent meant something, when even the smallest denomination carried respect. In that sense, the penny has become something more than a relic. It has become a shrine, a tiny altar to attention itself. Those who visit it come not only to see but to feel. They feel the hum of history under their skin, the faint vibration of meaning returning. They walk away changed, not because they've seen a $20 million artifact, but because they've touched a deeper truth about their own existence. The myth says that sometimes, late at night when the museum is empty, the security cameras catch something strange, a flicker of light on the coin's surface that moves like a heartbeat, pulsing softly in the dark. Some say it's just the reflection of passing cars or the movement of air conditioning vents. Others say it's something else, something alive. That the coin, in its stillness, remembers. What it remembers, no one knows. Perhaps it remembers the heat of the mint, the press of steel that first gave it form. Perhaps it remembers the hands that brushed against it unknowingly, the table where it was found, the gasp of the man who recognized its difference. Or perhaps it remembers something larger, the echo of human wonder, the sound of voices whispering in awe across continents. Because sometimes, memory doesn't belong to people alone. Sometimes, objects remember too. There are children now who were born after the discovery, who know the penny only through stories. To them, it's a legend, a tale of luck and destiny, of the universe choosing one coin out of billions. In classrooms, they watch videos about it and stare in disbelief at its value. Some laugh, some dream, and some quietly vow that one day they'll find something like it, not for the money, but for the story. That is how legacies grow, not through possession but through inspiration. Collectors still debate its mysteries, but the truth has already moved beyond numismatics. The penny has become a metaphor, a symbol of how meaning endures even in an age that forgets. It's proof that the human need to believe in something greater will always find a vessel, whether that vessel is a relic, a word, or a coin. Every age needs its miracles, and perhaps this was ours, a reminder that the extraordinary still exists, if only we choose to see it in quiet moments. When the museum empties and the last visitor's footsteps fade, the curators sometimes stand before the glass and feel something indescribable. A warmth, a gravity, a presence. One of them once said it felt like standing at the edge of time itself, as though all the hands that ever held coins, all the eyes that ever noticed their shine, were gathered invisibly in that room. The penny had become a vessel of collective memory, holding within it not just its own history but the spirit of human curiosity. And isn't that what every story is about in the end? Not the object, but the longing it awakens. The longing to find, to understand, to connect. The penny reminds us that discovery is not only about luck or wealth, it's about noticing, about the courage to stop, to look closer, to care. Every story like this teaches the same lesson, that the rarest treasures are those we almost overlooked. As the world changes faster than ever, with virtual economies replacing physical exchange, the penny stands as a symbol of continuity. It connects the digital present to the tangible past. It tells us that while technologies may fade, human wonder does not. We still crave the shimmer of something real, the proof that history is not gone, that time can still be held in the palm of a hand. Perhaps that is why people continue to visit it. They come not just for the coin, but for the feeling it gives them, that tiny, electric pulse of hope. The hope that even in a world obsessed with data and speed, there's still room for magic. They leave the museum quieter than they entered, as if something inside them has settled. And when they reach into their pockets later and their fingers brush a penny, they pause, for just a heartbeat, to wonder, somewhere out there, maybe another coin waits. Another small, unnoticed miracle resting in a drawer, a cash register, or a forgotten jar of change. Maybe it will be found tomorrow, or maybe not for 100 years. But when it is, the world will once again be reminded of what the 2021 penny taught us, that value lives where attention dwells, that the smallest spark can light the longest night. The 2021 penny endures, not as an artifact, but as an idea, that worth is not about possession but perception, that greatness can hide inside the humblest things. And as long as that truth is remembered, the coin will never truly rest. It will continue to glow quietly, a single flame in the vastness of time, whispering the same message to whoever stops to listen: look closer. Always look closer. Time moved forward, as it always does, but the story of the 2021 D penny only grew richer with every passing year. What began as a tale of chance and discovery evolved into something timeless, a mirror reflecting humanity's long, unbroken dialogue with value, creation, and impermanence. The coin no longer belonged to one person, one country, or one era. It had transcended all of that. It became a symbol of continuity, a reminder that even as civilizations rise and fall, the human heart keeps returning to the same question: what makes something truly valuable? In museums and history books, the penny now appears not only as an artifact of currency but as a marker of meaning. When future generations study it, they see not just a coin but a moment in human history when the world, for a fleeting instant, remembered what it means to notice. It stands as a pause in the endless rhythm of progress, a whisper between the thunder of invention, saying, "Stop. Look. Remember." Every civilization has left behind something small that outlasted its monuments. For the Egyptians, it was scarabs; for the Greeks, fragments of marble and clay. For us, it might be this copper disc, a token of humility in an age of grandeur. When the digital empires of our time have faded into static, when data centers crumble and cloud storage dissolves into dust, perhaps this little coin will still remain, gleaming faintly beneath layers of earth, waiting for someone else, in another age, to find it and wonder. It's strange to think that an object so tiny could outlive its creators, that something once dismissed as insignificant could become the storyteller of an entire era. Yet that's the quiet irony of the 2021 D penny, it embodies the human paradox. We strive for greatness, yet greatness often hides in simplicity. We chase progress, yet our hearts ache for permanence. The penny's endurance reminds us that legacy isn't built on size or power but on connection. It survived because it was seen, because someone cared enough to look closer. As the decades rolled on, the penny's legend began to take on a near spiritual resonance. People started making pilgrimages to see it, not for wealth but for reflection. Some would stand before the glass case in silence, heads bowed, as if standing before something sacred. Others would bring offerings, not money, but notes, poems, and sketches left discreetly at the base of the display. A janitor once found a small piece of paper folded neatly in half. On it were just 4 words: "I see it now." That was the gift the penny gave to the world: vision. The ability to see value where others see none. To notice what has been forgotten. To honor the overlooked. Because in truth, the story of the 2021 D penny isn't just about a coin, it's about every moment we've ignored beauty because we were too busy searching for something bigger. It's a reminder that wonder isn't found in grand events, but in the quiet persistence of the ordinary. Scholars have begun calling it the age of the small, inspired by how this one cent sparked a global re-evaluation of what matters. In the decades that followed its discovery, societies began to turn again toward mindfulness, sustainability, and preservation. The penny's myth became a metaphor for balance, between speed and patience, between ambition and gratitude, between possession and presence. It taught that nothing is too small to carry meaning, and that meaning itself might be the most enduring form of wealth. Artists took inspiration from it too. In paintings, the penny began appearing as a recurring motif, a glowing ember in the darkness, a symbol of memory refusing to fade. In music, composers translated its story into sound, soft percussion that echoed the steady rhythm of minting presses, layered with distant choral whispers that seemed to carry the voice of time. Poets wrote verses that compared its copper sheen to the first light of dawn, fragile but eternal. In all forms of art, it became shorthand for resilience, a reminder that the human spirit, like the coin, shines brightest when tested. Meanwhile, philosophers and historians began to draw connections between the penny's story and the arc of human civilization. They argued that the 2021 D represented more than a collector's curiosity, it embodied the essence of progress itself, creation born from accident, meaning emerging from chaos. Every era, they said, needs a moment like this, something that reminds people that perfection isn't the goal. Awareness is, the coin's journey through time has also become a meditation on mortality. For what are we, if not like coins ourselves, stamped, circulated, worn by life's exchanges, carrying the marks of every touch? We travel, we change hands, we gather stories. And though we fade, though our edges wear smooth, something of us always remains, a trace, a spark, a memory. The 2021 D penny embodies the truth in its copper glow, an eternal reflection of what it means to live, to endure, to be seen. There's a story told by one of the curators, perhaps myth, perhaps truth, that late one evening, as she was closing the museum, she lingered by the display. The hall was empty, silent except for the faint hum of lights. As she looked at the coin, she felt an overwhelming sense of calm, as though the world outside, with all its noise and motion, had stilled for just a heartbeat. She later described it as feeling like standing at the center of time. Maybe that's what the penny really is, a center, a point around which all moments briefly align. Some say it's not even about the coin anymore, that the object itself has become less important than the consciousness it awakened. The story has become a ritual, retold over and over, in classrooms, in documentaries, in quiet late-night conversations. Parents tell it to children before bed, not as a story about wealth, but about awareness. They say, don't walk too fast. Don't overlook the small things. One day, they might change the world. And so the legacy continues, not written in gold or carved in stone, but whispered through generations, like a prayer for attention. The penny reminds us that every human creation, no matter how insignificant, holds within it the potential to outlive its makers. And that, perhaps, is the closest thing we have to immortality, not endless life, but lasting meaning. The 2021 penny has become the storyteller of its time, carrying within its circular frame the heartbeat of a civilization that once nearly forgot how to see. It has outlasted fads, currencies, and systems, and it will continue to outlast us, quietly glowing, endlessly patient, a tiny sun at the center of its glass universe. And when the lights of the museum finally dim one last time, when the world beyond it shifts and changes again, the coin will still be there, shining faintly in the dark, whispering to whoever finds it next, look closer. The story is still being written. The night had fallen softly upon the world outside, and somewhere in a quiet museum, under the gentle breath of time, the 2021 penny continued its silent vigil. Decades had come and gone. Faces had changed. Voices that once spoke of it had faded into the archives of memory. But the coin remained, unmoved, unchanged, and yet more alive than ever in the imagination of those who sought meaning in its gleam. It was no longer just a collector's treasure, it had become a mirror for the human soul, a reflection of all that endures when everything else slips away. People who came to see it rarely spoke. They would stand before the glass and simply stare, as if trying to hear something beyond the silence. The light that touched its copper surface seemed to carry whispers, faint, almost imperceptible murmurs of history, of hands that once held it, of the dreams and fears of the age that minted it. Some swore they could feel warmth radiating from it, as if the metal had absorbed the pulse of every person who had ever touched it. Others said that looking into it felt like peering into the core of time itself, where the past and the future fold together, meeting in a single, glowing moment of now. It wasn't the value anymore. The world had long surpassed the idea of money as a measure of worth. Technology had evolved into something nearly beyond comprehension. But still, the story of the penny endured. Scholars and spiritual seekers alike studied it, not for its design or minting errors, but for what it represented: the strange, eternal bond between meaning and material, between thought and thing. The penny had become the scripture of simplicity in a world that once drowned in complexity. There were legends now, stories told around fires, on airless stations orbiting far from Earth, in digital archives whispered through networks. Each story reshaped the penny's history, adding new layers to its myth. Some said it was created from a unique batch of copper, accidentally mixed with trace elements from a meteorite, a fragment of the universe itself, forged in stellar fire billions of years ago. Others claimed it was minted at the precise moment lightning struck the Denver Mint, charging it with the energy of the skies. And a few believed it was chosen, not by chance, but by destiny, to carry a message through time. Of the truth, perhaps, didn't matter anymore. The beauty of myth lies not in its accuracy but in its endurance. The 2021 penny became humanity's myth of value, the story of how something so ordinary could awaken an entire world to the sacredness of small things. It reminded people that no invention, no empire, no monument would ever define them as deeply as their capacity to see wonder in the overlooked. As centuries passed, the world changed again. The boundaries between the physical and the digital blurred until there was almost no difference. Yet even then, the penny's story persisted. Simulations of it existed in virtual galleries, but the original, the tiny disc of metal, still sat in its case, preserved and protected. Scientists had debated for generations whether to move it to a safer location, but every time they tried, something seemed to resist. The coin stayed where it was, as if it belonged only to that place, as if the earth itself had claimed it as one of its last witnesses. A poet once wrote that the penny was the last heartbeat of an age that remembered to feel. And perhaps that was true. For in a future filled with endless information and ceaseless creation, there was still something rare and sacred about a single, unchanging object. It became a symbol of permanence in an age obsessed with renewal. Children learned of it in their lessons as a symbol of stillness, the idea that sometimes, to move forward, one must first learn to be still. Historians studying the era of its minting, 2021, often spoke of it as a time of contradiction. A time when humanity stood between despair and awakening, between chaos and rediscovery. The penny, in all its modesty, carried the essence of that era: resilience. For every nation, every person, faced uncertainty, yet somehow the smallest of all their creations endured. And in that endurance lay a quiet prophecy that no matter how far we evolve, no matter how sophisticated our worlds become, we will always circle back to what is simple, tangible, and real. There were even movements inspired by it, philosophies born from its message. One such movement called itself the Copper Path. Its followers believed that the universe leaves clues to its meaning in the smallest places, and that every overlooked detail contains the key to understanding the whole. They studied nature, old architecture, abandoned objects, anything forgotten. And in their study, they found beauty, balance, and peace. To them, the 2021 penny wasn't just a coin, it was a map to enlightenment, a teacher without words. In time, people began to see the penny not only as a relic but as a reminder of their own inner coin, the soul each person carries within, stamped by life, worn by experience, yet forever holding its imprint of origin. Just as the penny bore Lincoln's quiet, enduring face, a symbol of integrity and perseverance, so too did each person carry within themselves the face of something eternal, something unchangeable. The penny taught that to know one's worth is not arrogance, but awareness, the same awareness that allows a small object to shine brighter than gold. The longer the penny's story was told, the more it became entwined with the pulse of humanity itself. Generations passed it like a torch, and with each retelling, it grew not older but more alive. The $20 million value that once defined its fame was now almost laughably irrelevant. It wasn't worth money anymore, it was worth memory, faith, and continuity. It was priceless because it no longer belonged to any economy, it belonged to existence itself. In one of the last human archives before the Great Migration beyond Earth, the story of the penny was encoded in the interstellar library, meant to be sent toward distant stars. When the time came, a beam of light carried its tail across the void, the story of a small copper coin, minted in 2021, that became the heartbeat of a civilization. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of planets and gravity, that light still travels, still carries the whisper of Earth, and maybe, just maybe, in some distant age, on some other world, someone will see it. Someone will find the record of the 2021 penny and wonder, as we once did, why humanity cared so much about something so small. And in that wondering, they will understand. Because the penny's story isn't just about us, it's about all beings who search for meaning in the ordinary, who reach for eternity through the fragile doorway of the present. That is the legacy of the 2021 penny. Not wealth. Not rarity. But awareness, the awareness that everything, no matter how small, holds infinite worth when seen with open eyes. It is the story of a civilization that learned to see again, and even when the stars that witnessed its birth burn out and fade into silence, the echo of that seeing will remain carried in the light, reflected in every fragment of matter that remembers the touch of time. The coin will shine forever, not because it resists decay, but because it has already become part of the great story, the one that never ends. There is a stillness now, as though the world has taken a breath it never wants to release. The story of the 2021 penny, after so many years, has reached the edge of time itself, and yet, somehow, it still continues. Like all great stories, it never truly ends, it simply changes form, finding new hearts to live in, new eyes to awaken. What began as a simple copper coin, a fragment of the ordinary, became a vessel of everything extraordinary within us: curiosity, memory, hope, wonder. In the final telling, when the voice of the narrator begins to fade and the last image lingers, that small, glowing circle resting in its case, what we are really seeing is not metal, not history, but reflection. We see ourselves. The penny is every humble thing we've ever overlooked, every quiet beauty we've ever walked past without noticing, every miracle hiding in plain sight. And perhaps that was always the message it carried across centuries, that meaning is not given to the grand, but found in the small. When humanity finally left Earth, when the last ships rose through the clouds and carried our species toward distant worlds, the penny stayed behind. No one took it. No one could. It wasn't meant to travel, it was meant to remain, to be the seed of remembrance buried in the soil of our origin. Somewhere deep in the ruins of the old world, beneath layers of dust and forgotten air, the coin still rests untouched, unmoved, unbroken. And through the darkness, it glows faintly, as though the last light of our civilization never truly went out. There are those who say that, in the silence of Earth's nights, when the winds pass over what was once the museum, the faintest sound can still be heard, a metallic whisper, soft and eternal, echoing the rhythm of countless hands that once passed it along. It is not a voice of possession or pride, but of remembrance. It says, "I was seen. I was valued. And through me, they remembered themselves." The story of the 2021 penny is not a story of wealth. It is a story of awakening. It teaches that the measure of worth is not in numbers, but in awareness. That $20 million, while once a staggering symbol of its rarity, was never its real value. Its real worth was what it gave back, the lesson that to look closely is to love deeply, and that to love deeply is to live forever. And so, in the quiet ending of the tale, as the screen fades to black, the voice of the narrator returns, soft, almost a whisper, and says, "If you ever find a penny on the ground, stop. Look at it. Hold it in your hand. Feel its weight, the weight of time, of history, of memory. It may not be the 2021
It may not be worth a fortune.
But in that small circle of copper lies the story of all that has ever mattered, the story of us. Then the silence returns.
The music fades into the faint hum of eternity.
And for a moment, all the noise of existence falls away, leaving only that single shining image, a tiny coin, lit by a soft, endless light, because the story was never about the coin, it was about the eyes that learned to see it, and so it remains, forever and always, the 2021 D penny, worth $20 million in legend, but infinite in meaning, the last whisper of an age that once learned, against all odds,
that even the smallest thing can hold the entire universe.